Whiskey Jason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of the American over here in Germany. Today my guest is...
Brian Treacy, Sagamore Spirit.
And you're the president of Sagamore Spirit, I heard, correct?
That's correct.
And now my first question, if I may ask the question, before I greet the people here in the chat is, what is a president? I know a master distiller, I know a master blender, but what is a president?
That's a good question. I guess, I was the first person to come on board. So I did a little bit of everything. So I helped build out and design the distillery. I helped create the product. I helped create the packaging, go-to-market strategy. So and we're such a young company, we don't call anybody a master distiller because we don't feel like we've mastered anything quite yet.
Right. All right. Very, very good. So I do know distillery managers from Scotland, and they do basically a lot of what you're doing as well. They make sure that the whiskey gets in the cask, is what they say. And so that might actually be part of your job as well. All right. So here we have the Monday rye tasting. He's looking forward to it in German, but it's still very nice. Benjamin says, hoo-hoo. Valentine says, good evening from Hamburg, fellow connoisseurs. Looking forward to an interesting tasting. I've never had a Sagamore Rye before. Cheers to all. All right, it's tasting time. Can't wait to see. Gansmaster says, let's see, guy. Jan is here. Good evening, everyone. We have here MTB says, hello to everyone. I have no set. Oh, I'm sorry, MTB. I'm just watching. Good evening. And also Sabina says, good evening. So we have the following 3 bottles that we're going to try here. We have the Signature Rye. Mines are empty, but you have the real bottles there. And we have the Double Oak. And we have the Cask Strength, which I'm really looking forward to as well. One of my favorites. Very, very nice. So what we're going to do is we're just going to, at least what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour the Signature. And while I'm doing that, and while Brian's getting ready here, we're going to actually talk about rye. Isn't that something that's up in Pennsylvania? But you're in Maryland, aren't you?
We are. We're located in Baltimore, Maryland. Really, Maryland has a distilling history that goes back 158 years before Kentucky was even a state. And American whiskey, namely rye whiskey, sometimes we refer to as bourbon's older brother, really was born in the mid-Atlantic region. There was Pennsylvania, Monongahela style, and Maryland, really just Maryland style. And they both flourished, starting in, we started with rum in the 1600s, but by the 1700s, we were all whiskey.
All right, excellent. Now you're a brand that makes just rye whiskey. Why not bourbon? Why not single malt? What's so special about rye for you? And then we can go to the glass here.
Yeah, no, for us again, it kind of has to do with the Maryland style. So as I said, we were making pretty much rum, and then about 1733, we got hit with a bunch of taxes and tariffs from the British, where we were getting our molasses and sugars from, and we had a tremendous amount of immigration in the Baltimore area due to being on the harbor here. And we had a lot of people from Ireland and Germany and Scotland and Poland, and they knew how to distill grain-based type products. And that's when we really switched over to namely rye whiskey, because we grew a lot of rye grain as a cover crop during tobacco harvest and off seasons. And so Maryland just got to be very famous for a Maryland style rye. It was considered superior and premium rye whiskey compared to others. And then it went right up through, we kept distilling right through Prohibition. In 1910, we had 44 distilleries. One of the reasons Maryland's called the Free State. And then we eventually switched over to ethanol production due to World War II, and never really made much of a comeback after that. And our last distillery closed its doors in Maryland in the early 1980s. But even Heaven Hill and Kentucky distilleries had so much respect for Maryland rye whiskey brands. They bought up a lot of the names like Heaven Hill and Pikesville Rye and things like that. And so even though no one in Maryland was doing it for decades, we thought it was amazing that the identity of Maryland style rye could still live on. And so we're laser focused. We kind of took a page from Jack Daniels and Maker's Mark, kind of doing one thing for a while. So we're laser focused on rye whiskey, and that's it right now.
All right. So what I always love doing is I always love sharing some information here. So I'm going to start off with the location of the distillery. Now everyone over here in Europe, I'm in Europe, I'm in Germany, many of my fans are in Europe and UK, do not actually have a concept of what Maryland is. And so if you go to the East Coast of the USA, and we zoom in here, most of us know that it's Washington, D.C., and then you kind of zoom in a little bit more and you have Baltimore. And in Baltimore, it's downtown Baltimore up there, you actually have here on the water, basically, in this area that's redeveloped, your distillery here, which is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place that you've actually created there. It's unbelievable what the look and the view is from that place. And it's look at that there. I mean, come on, you got some good stuff that's just beautifully done there. And we have Sagamore Spirit Distillery right down by the harbor. Well done, well done. So, all right. So that's that. So you're a fairly young distillery, if you may say so yourself. Now, what we have here is not yet from your own production side, but you've actually bought it from MGP, which many of us know about. Now, tell us a little bit about the history of how did it happen that Under Armour has something to do with rye whiskey and the whole story there, if you be so kind.
There's a lot of things to cover in there.
I know.
That's for sure. So, well, Under Armour doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Sagamore because they're into health and wellness, you know, and we're a little bit opposite of that in some ways. Mental health, sometimes we help, but we are fortunate enough, the visionary and one of our owners is Kevin Plank, who is the founder and it was the CEO of Under Armour. But really what came about is he has a beautiful farm about 20 miles north of downtown Baltimore. And come to find out, the farm is built on a shelf of limestone aquifers. And so that farm is named Sagamore Farm. And out in the middle of the farm is a little spring house built in 1909. And in that, you open up the door to that little spring house, and there is no floor in the spring house. It's all this limestone water coming up out of the earth, and it catches in this little room and pours out. And we'll go down there and we catch it in a cistern, and then we'll bring it down to the distillery and we proof all of our whiskeys using 100% of that limestone spring water from Sagamore Farm, which we think is a key ingredient to the taste profile of our whiskey. So that's kind of, I guess, Kevin Plank and our connection, and not so much Under Armour, but more Sagamore Farm. And then, like you said too, because we didn't want to tell you about the great history of distilling in Maryland, and then say here's a vodka in the meantime. But that even though Maryland never made vodka, so we're fortunate enough to have a gentleman by the name of Larry Ebersold, who was the master distiller at MGP for 25 years, worked there for 41. He is still on the project, and he helped us build out and design the distillery. And of course, he had great connections at MGP, and we know MGP makes good whiskey. So we decided in 2013 we would start contract distilling with MGP while we built out our distillery and then let our whiskey age. So we ended up opening and started distilling in our distillery in 2017. But that whiskey is only about 3.5 years old. And we know we want our whiskey to be at least 4+ years old before we release it. So that's not far off, which is a very exciting time ahead for us. But one of the reasons we wanted to start with MGP, because we didn't want to spend 4 years building a distillery and then 4 years aging and 8 or 9 years later before we collected any money.
Okay, very, very good. I'm going to come back to that for a moment because I have a lot of questions. Same things happening in Ireland, some things happening in a lot of other places. Now, we do have the first whiskey here, and I would like to actually ask us to together try this and do a little bit of tasting and then go back onto the other subject. So we have here our signature rye from Sagamore. And the interesting thing is, if I remember correctly, MGP has a low and a high blend that you put together to make this, didn't you?
Right. And so Maryland was known for kind of rye whiskeys tend to be really bold and big and spicy, like the Monongahela style, which is interesting. Maryland was known as a sweeter, almost more approachable rye whiskey, really well balanced. So we distill the one mash bill that's 95% rye, 5% malted barley, and we'll age that 4 to 6 years depending on the mash bill. And then We have another one which is 52%
You were
rye.
too quick. Go back, do that again. That was so cool that you show both at the same time. All right, put you in solo here. All right, so you actually have the 5% at the. Oh, great. Now explain that again because not everyone caught that.
Yeah, so it just like bourbon, you have to be at least 51% corn in your mash bill or recipe to be a bourbon. Well, you have to be at least 51% rye grain to be a rye. And so then we do what we call our barely legal rye. It's 52% rye, 43% corn, and 5% malted barley. And we age that separately for 4 to 6 years, depending on the product. And then every whiskey we have has a blend of those two straight ryes, a marrying of those two straight ryes. And what we find is you kind of get the spicy complexity, the high, that classic rye spice, the baking spices, the clove, the nutmeg, the mint, cinnamon. And then you get this interesting sweet, fruity, almost floral balance to the low. And so it kind of creates a really nice balanced rye whiskey with some complexity and dimensions to it instead of just being big, bold, and spicy.
All right, very good. So what I'd like people to do that actually have this at home and or the tasting sets, I sent out 22 tasting sets of this to my fans over here in Germany, is to give us just your nosing notes and also your tasting notes. So Valentine says less spicy and less in your face than I know from other ryes, rather pleasant, smooth, sweet. Some people talk about dill. Would you actually say you get a dill moment here from the rye?
That's a kind of a classic MGP note.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon to get some of that dill in there. Someone has a great palate. Great observation.
All right, very, very good. So we're at 40, what was it here? 46?
41.5% ABV.
Yeah, 41.5. Yeah, we don't do proof over here. We do that. And I really love your bottle design. You have the Sagamore here. You have, what is it, from the jersey of the jockey, the moments there with the horse and so on. It's a very beautiful, even handwritten moments are on the bottle. Even that is kind of impressive, to be very honest, if you think about how many bottles I've actually seen all over the world already.
Yeah, they keep asking me when we're going to stop handwriting, and I say not that I know of. And so, as a matter of fact, we're a little backed up. And I said, well, can I come down on Wednesday and help on the bottling line? And they said, you could come down and help on the batch labels.
Oh yeah, that's exactly. Okay, good. Do that. Why not? Very, very good. So I'm going to try this. I love rye, the Sagamore. I must admit the Double Oak is a little bit more of my preferred, and the cask strength, but this is also a very, very nice one. All right, so we have a lot of people coming in now. Usually I do it at 9 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock European time. So we're a little bit early today, and some people are a little bit, I forgot it's at this time. All right. Hello, Sportler. Good to see you. All right. Valentine writes here also nice oak note, a hint of mint. I got that. We have more spices, more of those, as you talked about, the allspice in there. Still relatively sweet. We have an Ostfriesian in Bavaria. Welcome also here. I like that a lot. This is very, very good. So good stuff. Okay. Thank you. We have one at the moment. One shop that has this continuously over here in Germany. That's our beowein.de, and he's going to actually do a new order of that. Some of it's out at the moment, but other things are going to come back in. And his shop here, that is beowein.de, that's Christian Meissner. And Tropnitzer Getränkehandel Meister is what you can find it. And I'll just put a nice little link here in the chat so that everyone wants to go buy this, they can. And I'll show you his shop as well in a second. All right. So we actually got this from N10 Bourbons. They imported it into the UK. And from the UK, we import over to Germany. So Germany's not yet the biggest bourbon and rye market in the world, but we are working on it. All right. Very, very good.
I hear it's growing pretty well over there, though. People talk highly of the German market.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. So this actually runs at 56 euros at the moment. That's something I can recommend as well. And if I may show the only shop at the moment that has this stocked officially and regularly, it would be here. And as I said, beowein.de. and the Sagamore is for 56, I'm sorry. And the other two are running at 68 each. We dropped our VAT from 19% down to 16%, and now some people just adapted their prices for the time until the end of the month because of Corona to improve and help the economy. And so you have very weird prices. Usually it'd be $39.99, and now it's $36.14. It's just like, well, all right, good, why not?
We'll take the savings.
Exactly. So here, dang, I wish I had all three before me now, but there's at home and not at my parents' place. I'm so sorry about that. Probably Kai. Sabina likes this rye, has a lot of citrus there. And here we have nutmeg. Okay, and Gat says, good to see you. Spicy. The nutmeg is what we're talking about. Okay, very, very nice. Yep, it's a good whiskey, a good rye. And this is that mixture of those two different blends together. So you had an important event, I think, when was it? The day before yesterday, where you had your penny, what was it called again?
We call it Penny's Proof.
Tell me more.
We mentioned, as we mentioned earlier, we have a brand, a group of people, loyalist followers. We call our whiskey thieves, and they get to go to special events that are tied to our brand. They get to know about special releases before anybody else or special events. And we have a beautiful 40-foot mirror polished column copper still that makes our whiskey, and our fans named her Penny. And so she's a beautiful copper still, and we wanted everyone to kind of follow along with the aging process, if you will, of our Maryland made whiskey. And so last year we released Penny's Proof, which comes in a 3-pack, and you can go ahead and there are 200 milliliter samples, and so and you can sip one now, share one later, and then savor one and follow along with our aging process and see that it's heading in the right direction. But you can also see why it might not be on the market yet. And so the other day we released on Saturday we released our 3.5-year-old Penny's Proof, and it was a huge success, a big improvement from our just one more year in that barrel. Made a huge improvement on the depth and the complexity of the whiskey. We had 594 of these, and we had a little over 2,000 people show up.
Wow, I was expecting somewhere around 800, but 2,000, no.
And we did it all in cars, so it was socially distant. Got a little difficult. We've never done it that way. We had some challenges, but we made it work, and we're really happy. And then we sell it for 1 penny. We sell the whiskey for 1 penny.
Excellent, excellent. All right, very, very good. So I'd like to share the screen one last time probably today, and this is actually your website. So you have here your website, SagamoreSpirits.com. So what I really hear, we're drinking those 3 today. You've had many, many awards, which is very, very nice. And what you're talking about is whiskey thieves. So for example, you go down here at the bottom, you become a thief, and all you have to do actually is then type on that and then fill in that little information down here, and you can actually be then informed all the time about anything special about the entire development going on in Sagamore. Now, we over here in Europe not going to get in a plane anytime soon and drop off and come over to your distillery, but your distillery is open for the people in the area. You can actually visit. Can you do tours? What are you doing at the moment with all that Corona stuff going on?
Yeah, so we obviously coronavirus has really affected everybody. We stopped making whiskey in March and started making hand sanitizer for the hospitals.
Yep, thank you for that. Hands up.
It's the least we could do. It felt good to feel like you could do something to help. Yep. And then in July, we switched back to making whiskey again, and we opened up, but we're only doing tasting tours right now, meaning keeping you in the visitor center, keeping you in our tasting rooms. Very small groups, typically, ideally a private group. Masks are always worn unless you're tasting, socially distant. But we're not letting anybody into the operations area or the distillery for fear of our team getting sick. So trying to protect them because we have a lot of making up to do in packaging and distillation since we stopped for several months. So doing the best we can in a safe environment.
Okay, very, very good. Now, this is a great whiskey. I really like it, but actually, I think you can improve. And you have improved by going up a level. Just my personal opinion in the double cask. Could you explain to us what the double cask is? What's so different about it?
Yeah, no, and appreciate the feedback on the first one. The first one is definitely our approach to Maryland style, something very easy, very approachable, and your fans here, your followers have great palates, a lot of citrus in that, and so forth. And so it still stands up in a cocktail like a Manhattan or old fashioned, but the double oak really starts to take it up another level. This one will age the two rye whiskeys for about 5 years. Then we'll blend them together and we put them back into another new American oak barrel. What's unique about this barrel, though, is we go ahead and we cut grooves down the inside of the staves.
Oh, like Sinatra did with the Jack Daniels. I like, yeah.
And it creates these waves on the inside of the staves, and it creates about 23 to 25% more surface area, so the whiskey and the wood can interact. But instead of doing a heavy char and burning that off, we end up doing a toasted barrel. And then we'll do another 12 to 18 months inside that toasted wave stave barrel. And then we'll proof this one to 43.3% ABV. So a lot more baking spice. And I'll let you guys go through the tasting notes, but definitely different whiskey.
Okay, please write down once again, maybe here for the double rye, for the double oaked rye, your tasting notes. Now tell us, not everyone understands the difference between a charred barrel and a toasted barrel. Many of us have the picture of the flames coming out of the barrel. That's what you're not doing now, are you? Here with this one.
No, correct. So the first 5 years of aging is in a charred oak barrel. So where we'll go through, after seasoning the staves for about 12 months outdoors, the coopers will assemble the barrels and they'll go ahead and put it in, and they'll hit it with flame enough to get the down to about a 3+ char. Really kind of gets it nice and black on the inside, creates a nice charcoal filtration. On the second wave, though, we don't hit it really. We just basically almost bake it like bread.
Exactly.
Yeah, and just enough to get these really interesting wood, sugary, bakey, kind of like a toasted coconut almost notes to come out of it.
Now, this is something that Michter's has some toasted barrels, which are just out of this world. And you have this as well, and you're about a third of the price sometimes compared to those toasted barrels, those single barrels over there from Michter's. And so that's a very, very good thing. The first tasting notes are coming in, rich and sweet oak notes, more cereal, more bread notes, less minty, still the nutmeg and clover there, deeper, more complex, so much better in the nose than the Signatory. Now, unfortunately, people come in and out of these streams. Could you once again talk about the mash bill real quick? There's someone who didn't catch it about the rye content in this and the two different blends.
Yeah. So again, we distill two mash bills. We distill one, again, that is 95% rye, 5% malted barley. And then we distill one that's barely legal rye. It's 52% rye, and then 43% corn and 5% malted barley. Excellent. And then we'll age those for about 5 years and then blend them together. Now on the Signature, for every 2 barrels of this, we'll dump one of this.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that either. Good.
On the Double Oak, we go about almost 50-50.
So excellent. Thank you. Thank you once again for asking the question, Rocky Lux. And thank you very much here, Brian, for actually explaining that in such in-depth, because I didn't know there was a different ratio between the two of them. So not just the toasted barrel, but also the different ratios of the ryes actually have an influence on what I'm having here. I like.
Yeah, that's the fun part of having multiple mash bills. Is you can really play with it and have some fun, and change up the kind of the taste profiles and what you get out of the different whiskeys. So that's what's a really fun aspect of what we do.
All right, very, very good. Now, we mentioned this before. You do not yet. This is not your juice that you produce yourself in Maryland. This is from MGP. What is contract distilling? Not everyone understands that concept either. Could you maybe explain that in more detail as well?
Absolutely. So there is And there's, every business model, it's whatever you think makes most sense for you. But there is sourcing where you just go out and find aged whiskey and you buy it as is.
For example, the normal, I'm just going to hold up this real quick. This is the normal MGB 95.5, which you don't have actually, do you? You have contract distilling, so you have a different recipe.
Correct. And so we'll use sometimes it's the same recipe, but we'll tell them what time. We don't want to do anything in the summer. It gets really hot and very hard to hold a good temperature during fermentation. Mm-hmm. We wanted our barrels because we wanted a certain char level. And then so they made whiskey specific to our orders. Right. And then they would send us the distillate samples. We would evaluate them and so forth. And so we just felt a better connection over quality of the products that we would get.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So let's, I'm going to taste this because this is, like I said, actually for my sipping, my favorite one that's out there. And I really enjoy that double oak, especially that complexity that you get from the second, after putting it together, putting it back. How long is it in the second barrel approximately? Does it change? Is it always the same?
Batch 3. Do you have batch 3?
I have batch 9AA. Is there a 9AA? So it says 9AA, so I don't know what that is. All right. I have a 700 milliliter bottle, so I thought it's important that you might know that also.
Yeah, I think that batch is about 12 months in the barrel on the second barrel. We are now up to 18 months, but not going to do any more than 18 months.
All right. All right. Very, very good. So Lux thinks, now that I heard that I can taste that there's more corn in the double oak, it's sweeter. It's amazing how if we think of something, then we know something as well. Yeah. Marcos loves or really likes the double oak. That's great. Great nose, citrus fruit, spicy grain, sweet. Very, very good. The taste is what I expected. Very smooth. Yes, thank you, Sven. Good stuff. Yeah, excellent. Now, I mentioned before that I wanted to go back to something. You have been using MGP juice, and you will start using probably next year. Not going to name a month, but next year you're going to switch over to your own. Now, Teeling and Ireland has the same problem. They've been using sourced juice as well for the last 4 years, and now they're switching over to their own juice as well. Will you be able to maintain that flavor profile, or will Sagamore taste different next year? What's your plan?
It's a really great question. Our goal is to stay. We like the flavors that we have now, but we would expect that there will be some subtle differences because the flora and the fauna are a little different in Maryland than Indiana. Our aging barns are a little bit different than theirs as far as the style. They use old stone buildings, and we are using metal-sided buildings that we paint black, so they get really hot. And we just don't have the same bacteria that they have in their system that they have for 100 years of distillation. Yep. What we're seeing right now is a lot more like vanilla and sweetness in some of ours. We're also seeing higher proofs come out of the barrel. And then that we were experiencing at MGP. So it'll be interesting. We hope, if anything, the subtle differences are differences that people say they like. It's definitely going to be a challenge. We knew we were setting ourselves up for a bit of a challenge, but we're up for it. And it'll be kind of a very slow go. We think it could be a couple of years.
Will you be mixing their juice with your juice at the beginning?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. I'm not that worried at the moment. That helps a lot.
Yeah.
Because every once in a while you just kind of have that break and it's like, oh no, but if you have that slow, then you actually can do something. All right. Now, this is a question here. It's in German. I'll translate. So it says it's only American oak is used. Does that mean there's no Canadian oak in there? Or would that actually be possible? How do you guarantee against it?
Good question. For our sourcing and our loggers and our coopers can only source American oak, so it has to come from the States. It can't come from Canada. So we know that we source from kind of the Ozarks, Arkansas, Missouri, Kentucky area, Alabama. And we do go as far up into Maryland, Virginia, and Pennsylvania as well. But that's about as far as our oak sourcing goes.
All right. Now, Sven actually picked up my next point now here. I'm going to go to a screen share because I don't have these somewhat unique bottles here. So these are the three we're talking about right now, our Signature Rye, our Cask Strength, and a Double Oak. But you have other things down below here. You have a Manhattan finish, a tequila finish, a rye ale finish. You have a Calvados, you have cognac, and you have the distillery exclusive Sauvignon Blanc cask Blanc cask aged rye, which is amazing. So tell us a little bit about that, and why don't we have that in Europe yet?
We're working on it. So that's underneath our Sagamore Reserve series, which what we do is we just kind of have a fun kind of R&D innovation with barrel finishes, and it usually depends on how many barrels we can find, but it's pretty limited usually in the release. We talk anywhere from 125 to maybe 900 cases total.
Okay, a case is times 6, so that's not a very big, and especially if you think of all, you're in what, 28 or 38 states at the moment?
38 states.
And 6 countries, right?
6 countries. So
wow.
Not even everybody in the States gets it.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So, but it's been fun. You know, we'll release those twice a year, usually once in the spring and once in the fall. We did one with, we sourced some Remy Martin cognac barrels that had cognac in them for about 30 years. That was a beautiful, like creme brulee, brown sugar. The Calvados was absolutely spectacular. Really beautiful apple, honey is really interesting. The Manhattan one, though, that we just released here in the States, it was a really interesting vision. So we took our rye whiskey after it aged for 4 years, 7 months, and we sourced some barrels that had cherry brandy in them, vermouth, and another barrel that had bitters. And so we put the whiskey in the brandy barrels, the vermouth barrels, and the bitters barrels. And then we basically deconstructed a Manhattan cocktail and then reconstructed the flavor profiles back in. It's 100% whiskey, but it's 51.5% ABV. So it's a whiskey that drinks like a Manhattan.
Yeah. All right. Very good. Amazing. I've never actually ever heard of that. And I think that is I love your ability to innovate and to experiment and just to try weird and crazy things. I don't think anyone has done anything like that yet. And especially not using rye. I mean, that's what is really, really, really special there. And so this is a beautiful, for me, whiskey, and you can actually enhance it and make it better in some cases with those finishes. Good job. Now, so we're over here in Germany, many of us, some of us in UK, we don't understand the 3-tier system. We don't understand why it's not in all the states. Could you maybe tell us why is it not available in all states? What would hold you back from putting it into certain states or roll out there?
That's a good question. So, some of the compliance and laws in the United States almost are still in the prohibitions era.
Many of them are actually. I'm going to be very, very blunt. You can be as very diplomatic as you want, but it's sometimes just frustrating.
It really is, and every state governs it differently. They some states completely control it.
So Virginia, Pennsylvania, for example, the 2 states where I grew up over there. Yep.
Yeah, and so everything has to go through and they are very slow to react, and so they miss out on a lot of good whiskeys because of that. You know,
I'm sure they do. Yes.
And then there's places like Florida where anything goes. And they get a lot of good whiskeys in Florida and so forth.
Okay, very, very, very good. Now, the other thing you said you were also in 6 different countries. Where are you in the world, and when will you finally make it to the Netherlands? Guinea Pig asked.
We are currently in China, Japan, Philippines, Canada, UK, and Germany.
Yeah.
About to open up Panama, and maybe talk to our partners at N10, and maybe we need to look at the Netherlands.
Exactly. And Mr. Guinea Pig, contact me at whiskeyjason@gmail.com, and I will actually be able to help you out there. I also have a tiny little retail shop where I'm doing this now. And especially, as I mentioned before, the bio wine is the main place where you can go to Germany to actually get that. And I think they send it to Netherlands. I'm not sure. If you have a German address, we can send it to that, definitely, and you can pick it up if you're close to the border, all right? So he said here, quickly looked and found no selling points in Netherlands. We're working on it. All right, very, very good. And many people did not know that it was actually that you have 50 countries basically in the state when it comes to alcohol and the laws there. And it's worse in Europe. I can just go to one country and sell to all the people in the European Union, which is very, very nice. I have to work a little bit with tax laws, but other than that, there's no big problem. But in America, it's a nightmare. It's just unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't sell unless you can visit the distillery. We can sell you some whiskey, but I could never like mail you a bottle. It has to go from us to a distributor, and from a distributor to the retail. And then in some places, some states, the distributor can sell both to restaurant and retail. But a lot of those control states, Pennsylvania, Virginia, the restaurants have to get in their cars and drive to the retail store and buy it themselves off the shelf and bring it back to their restaurants.
Exactly. Amazing. And then sometimes you can't buy it on Sundays, and sometimes you can't buy more than 3 bottles in a month. And even Texas has some of these rules where you just kind of you want to pull out your hair and just scream. It's terrible, terrible.
Just ask my sales team.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And so we're blessed. I just contact Amazon. And it's like, boom, it's on Amazon, usually most of the stuff. And they alcohol, can send it to my home. So Black Friday is going to be great because all of these standard whiskeys are on sale cheaper than many of the prices I have as a wholesaler, which is just good and bad, however you look at it.
Yeah, we can't buy any alcohol from Amazon in the United States.
But in the UK and in Germany we can, and so we're very, very blessed or privileged according to that. Yeah. All right, very, very good. So we have that. I'd like to move on, if I may. If I haven't seen any more tasting notes recently, so maybe one or two people will be able to put that in there, because now we have the big boy, our cask strength, which is just beautiful. We're running now here at 56.1%, and I have batch number 9AB this time. Interesting. All right. So, and I have bottled by JB. So JB is the person who bottled, or what is JB at the bottom? What does that mean?
That's the person who signs off on it at the very end. So the bottle gets inspected 6 times on the bottling line. It gets inspected before it even gets cleaned out. So we'll clean out the glass by blowing compressed air and making sure there's no dust particles or anything from the box it came in. Clean it out. We'll inspect it. Then we fill it. And we inspect it again, and then we put a cork in it, and we inspect it again, and then we'll put the capsule closure on it, and we inspect it again, and a label, inspect it again, and then before it gets all polished, we'll polish the bottle, and once we think it looks good, there's no signs of any defective packaging or anything like that, then we'll sign off with the batch label saying it passed inspection, and out the door it goes. And so JB is the teammate who signs off on that. And sometimes we have guests from tour sign the bottles. We'll let them inspect it, but they can sign we really inspect it, but we'll let them sign off on
it. That's nice of you. Exactly. Around the world, I have a couple barrels where I've signed off on them as well with WhiskyJason, which are very, very great. I'm looking forward. I've got good pictures of that. So,
but JB, that's Josh Brooks. So that's one of ours.
Very good. Was he on the stream with Mark Gillespie yesterday, the day before? I don't know.
No, that was Ryan.
Okay. You're right. So there were so many different people there. It's a very interesting stream. You go to then Whiskey Cast, CAST, and Mark Gillespie. He was actually at your I'm going to call it the open door day where too many people came. Yeah. So, very, very nice. All right. I like this nose a lot. This is actually smoother than I remember with its 56% here. What is the makeup of this whiskey, if I may ask, your blending ratios?
So what I think is really interesting about this, everything is exactly the same as the signature rye, the very first one you tried today.
Yep.
But obviously, we don't add any of the spring water to it, like we do. So this one stays high proof, but they are drastically different experiences.
So, someone says a drop of water actually brings out a little bit of chestnut. Sven, interesting. I'm not a big fan of chestnut on my whiskey. We use that a lot we don't use it. Many distilleries use it a lot, but some distilleries have it. Also in Ireland with our Method and Madness, they've used chestnut. We have over here something called Gravedigger, which is from Aurium, which used the chestnut. Even the first edition of St. Kilian used chestnut. I'm not a big fan of it. So if you like it, I'm happy for you. All right, but now I'm getting it. As soon as he said it, it's like, oh wow, a little bit of yes, you're right. The chestnut.
He planted the seed.
He planted the seed in my subconscious, and now I got it. Yeah. Oh wow. Okay, interesting. So you have basically two of the one type, and then one of the other, more or less, here of the different blends. So here it's high rye twice, and one the low rye, basically, right?
Correct.
Okay, very, very good. Now, if I ask, Brian, what's your history of whiskey? Have you always been a whiskey nerd, or was it something that happened the last 10 years? What was your personal development into this, into this area of being a obsessed person with rye whiskey?
I am definitely obsessed, but I have not been like this all my life. It's really been about the last 8 to 10 years is where it really kind of came on. And so before I started Sagamore, I actually owned a backpacking and kayaking guide service in the Grand Canyon and Yosemite and so forth. So I used to be spend a lot of time in the outdoors, and I always knew at the end of a good hike, I liked a nice whiskey.
Okay, good job. Yep. All right. And so you decided, hey, let's why the rye, and why not a typical standard bourbon? I would have expected you in Colorado, for example, with your outdoorsiness.
Well, I grew up in Maryland, and I grew up in Maryland, and I went to high school with Kevin Plank, and so it was his vision to start this, and he called me up and said, you've started other businesses and are an entrepreneur. Would you like to try and get this business started? And it sounded really interesting, and I got to come. I was doing a lot of fun things before, but I really liked the sound of this business, and this industry was intriguing. And then I got to move back close to my mom and dad. So, now that I'm married, raising kids, it was nice to be close to them. It was living really far away from them for a long time. And with grandkids, that wasn't much fun. So, it's worked out well.
All right. Tim just gave you basically the blessing of the Pope here. I'm going to say that way. I love Lot 40. Lot 40 is for me the best rye on the planet, basically, for value for money. And he just said, I have the Lot 40 and glass at the same time. Sorry, Jason, Sagamore wins. It couldn't have a better seal of approval than that. All right. So exactly. All right. Sorry, Dr. Don Livermore. He's also a friend of mine, but it couldn't have been a better praise than that.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. There's a lot of great whiskey out there, and it's just for a small new brand like us, this is a great opportunity, and appreciate the feedback. And we know not every one of our whiskeys will be for everyone, but hopefully people find one that they like.
And I like this one. Oh, wow. Oh, that gives you a little bit of a kick there with that 56%. But it's not as much as you would expect, actually. There's a little bit more of power, but it still has enough grip that it doesn't just blow out your palate right away. Wonderfully done. Very, very nice. So luckily for us over here in Europe, it's always the question of bottles. So thank you very much for doing 700 milliliters bottles, because I cannot import 750 legally. So I have to actually take a nice little sticker and place over on top of the 700. I have to make it the 750. I have to write down that it's a 700 according to the official German laws of packaging and so on. And so it's a pain in the butt doing that. And some actually people that I work with, for example, the warehousing and the import stations, they won't even touch the bottles of 750. Say, sorry, we're not allowed to. And so you're safe over here in Europe. You are going to become a bigger player here. And we're going to have more people asking also the retailers, hey, where can I get the Sagamore? I saw this, and this is supposed to be very, very nice, and it is very nice.
Oh, that's
All
great.
right.
Good feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, very important, actually. More important than most people. UK is not so picky, but Germany and the rest of Netherlands, France, and Spain, and so on. If you want to go into the market here, you need to have the 700 milliliters bottles. Otherwise, you're going to have paperwork and a lot of problems here. All right, Valentine. Alcohol is incredibly well integrated, deep, spicy, sweet in the end. Wow, I just love that. That's a great, great way of putting it. Thank you. All right. Good job. So those are the three you decided to work on: the double oak, the signature rye, and here the barrel proof. And more are to come in the future, I hope. Maybe one day we'll get a cognac. Maybe one day we'll get a Calvados. Maybe one day we'll get another of your crazy experiments that are out there, I hope.
We'll work on that. Just, we'll dedicate it to you and your followers, and so we'll work on that. We'd like to definitely expand our distribution and time for sure. And just slowly just getting up and running. We're only 4 years old, so just getting going, but we definitely would like to bring those types of products to you guys as well.
All right. Our plan, of course, is to actually import the whiskey pallet of each over here to Europe, hopefully next year, if it could be at all possible. Maybe even drop it down directly over here to Germany, that we have enough distribution network just for the Sagamore to be able to do that of the three different. Maybe the first one's going to be a mixed palette, to be very honest. And then after that, we might vamp up a little bit or ramp up, and that'll be very, very nice. And to have enough people that want to have this over here, because this is a new and upcoming brand. This is very, very not just hip, but actually very, very well done. Now, some people have a little bit of the problem. They're going, but it's just MGP juice. I can get MGP juice someplace else. Why do I need this? Could you maybe convince them one last time why this is different?
Yeah, I am, and we always want to be transparent. We don't feel like we have anything to hide. MGP makes a lot of great whiskey, and a lot of folks sell their whiskey. I think what you'll find for us is it's not your typical MGP whiskey. I don't really know many folks blending the two straight rye mash bills, and if such opposite ends of the spectrum too. One almost 100% rye and one barely legal rye really kind of creates a really interesting, unique balance in our opinion. So it doesn't drink like, a bullet. It doesn't drink like some of these others where they're just blending big lots full. Now, Bullet makes a nice little whiskey, don't get me wrong, but especially for the price point. But I think you're going to find it's very, very different. A lot of times we get people say, I don't normally drink rye, but I like yours. It's a bourbon's drinker's rye. The double oak, you don't see many double oak rye whiskeys at all.
True.
And a lot of times at a blind tasting, our double oak gets labeled a bourbon. And so it's interesting. So,
that's the reason why I like a little bit more. Who knows? Sven just asked, actually, will there be a double oak and cask strength maybe one day?
We get that question a lot. It's very interesting. And I asked the lab, we're going to be bottling it up again at the end of December, because we kind of do it only a couple of times a year. And we do it about 4 times a year. And we're going to do it again at the end of December. And I wanted to try a cask strength version, because talking to Ryan Norwood, who runs all of our operations, was on Whiskey Cast with Mark Gillespie on Saturday. Right. He's got a great palate, very, very nice guy, very intelligent. His opinion is that actually he thinks the taste isn't as good. The product isn't as good at cask strength. And I'm kind of curious, because we get that question a lot. So, we want to be able, if it is better, it's something we should consider maybe here and there as a special release.
And especially maybe his better is not my better as well. Everyone's palate's a little bit different, and some people just like the cask strength. So we have a couple people here actually says, Metal Malt, he says, a very tough call between the cask strength and double oak. Both are very good whiskeys, but I think I'm leaning more towards the double oak. Marco says here, my ranking double oak, cask strength, and then the signature, but in the end, all of them I really, really like. Valentine says, my resume, the double oak is unchallenged on the nose. on the palate, Double Oak and Cask Strength go head to head. So I actually must admit, Marcos, I have exactly the same ranking here. I love the Double Oak. I really, really like the Cask Strength, and the Signature is one of the things where I just go, yummy, I like it. But if I could have the choice, Double Oak is the one I'd go for. All right, look at here. Sabina also says Double Oak and then Cask Strength. And nothing wrong with the Signature. It's just the other two are just so much better. They blow them a little bit out of the water, yeah?
Yeah, and for us, the Signature too is we still find a lot of people are new to whiskey or new to rye whiskey, and so we wanted to create something that is approachable and not very angular, won't blow out the back of their throat. We see the seasoned whiskey drinkers tend to always go towards the Double Oak and the Cask Strength naturally. But I always say, where did you start? Your whiskey career. Did you start it on Jim, Jack, or Johnny? And it's always kind of that lower ABV. And so this is kind of maybe our Jack, Jim, Johnny. Maybe get you in the door, and then you can grow up through the portfolio. So, but if you've been drinking for a whiskey for a while, it doesn't surprise me you say that. And we don't take offense to it. Like I said, we make all three very different whiskeys for different folks.
Yep. Very, very good. All right. So this was very good. So if anyone has any questions, they may ask now. What we didn't talk about is, well, we briefly talked about that, is the history of rye. You did mention that many, many people came over from Europe, and before that they were drinking rum, but they switched. Could you go back into many people have joined now since then. Could you go into brief history again of what makes rye, and especially Maryland rye so special?
Yeah, to kind of repeat myself a little bit here, but those who kind of joined late is, Maryland has a distilling history that goes back 158 years before Kentucky was a state. And in the 1600s, it was really rum. But then we started getting hit with taxes and tariffs from the British in the Molasses Tax Act in 1733. And at that point, the very resourceful people back then said, we don't want to pay taxes and tariffs. We just want a good drink. And so being that we grew a lot of tobacco, we used rye as a cover crop. And we had folks that with a lot of immigration into Maryland, being on the water and the Chesapeake Bay. And so we had a lot of folks from Germany and Poland and Ireland and Scotland who knew how to distill grain-based type products. And so we only need to make so much bread. So they switched over to basically making grain-based products, distilling on the grain, which was rye whiskey. And so Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, even up to New York, all were really making nothing but rye whiskey at the time. And that is the original American whiskey, is rye whiskey before bourbon. And then eventually, things kind of flourish. And eventually, as we get into the 1780s, 1790s, we start having the Whiskey Rebellion in the States, where when we came out of the Revolutionary War, they decided they wanted to start taxing whiskey. And so all the distillers started getting very angry. And we had the Whiskey Rebellion, and George Washington sent in his army to calm everybody down. And that's when people like Basil Hayden and James and Mary Beam left Maryland and moved to places that weren't developed yet. But eventually it would be called Kentucky in 1792. And that's why they're high rye bourbons, is they knew how to distill rye, but as they got further away from the mid-Atlantic, they got more corn. And so, and how kind of went from rye to kind of bourbon. And then, by the 1800s, you had all of, Kentucky, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Illinois, all distilling a lot of whiskey. During the Civil War, a lot of people going up and down the mid-Atlantic region. And so Maryland really gained its reputation as a superior, really sweeter rye whiskey. And we went into 1910, we had 44 distilleries in Maryland, all making whiskey, 21 in downtown Baltimore. And then we kept distilling through Prohibition for medical purposes, and even exporting out to Scotland and the UK. Mm-hmm. And we have these great articles that talk about to throw the hijackers off the trains, or the pirates for the cargo ships going across seas. Tell them the whiskey's from Kentucky. They won't want it as much as if they knew it was from Maryland. And so it's just got this great reputation. I didn't know that
either. Great.
Yeah. So it got this great reputation. And then, like I said, we switched over half of the 550 million gallons of ethanol required to support World War II from the States came from the distilleries. Vodka kind of came on the scene, and whiskey in the States in the 70s started really kind of dying. And the last distillery closed its doors in 1982, and a Kentucky distillery bought the names because they thought Maryland rye whiskey was so superior, and they really still had a lot of respect for it. And then Sagamore saw this opportunity is the fact that no one in Maryland had been making rye whiskey for decades, but yet that brand, that reputation, that historic notion of Maryland rye whiskey being really great lived on. And we saw it as a great opportunity to come in and get involved as a craft distillery and start. And so that's why we only do rye whiskey today.
All right. So I'm going to share one more picture. This is actually a picture of your column still. And is that really a spirit safe, or what's going on there here?
Those are our 3 spirit safes because we run a column still. It's a 40-foot column still made by Vendome, 24 inches in diameter. And we have 19 distillation trays, so it makes a really beautiful, clean distillate. And we run it off of 2 350-gallon doublers. So it's kind of our version of triple distillation. And Maryland used to be known for these 3-chamber pot stills. They're basically like a 3-chamber still, like 3 pot stills on top of each other. So it's kind of, again, giving a nod to the folks before us that were making whiskey in the States. And then as we follow along for quality standards, we'll follow along through the spirit safes. In the first run, it's about 125 proof. Second run is 130 proof. And then the final run is 135 proof, or I should say, around 65, 67% ABV.
Okay, very, very good. Now, the question here was any information on how much rye affects the price of the final product. Corn is much cheaper than rye. Could you give us an example of the differences and maybe that you pay per ton and difference there?
That's a great question. Really a great observation, because a lot of people say, well, why is rye more expensive than bourbon? It's all kind of the same. And we buy bushel. We pay $3.23 a pound for non-GMO corn.
Right.
And for rye, we pay about $11.
Oh, almost $9 to
$11,
okay.
depending. So it is drastically different as far as our cost of goods that go into that bottle. So great observation.
All right, very, very good. Now, 2 other things here. Is that malted rye that you use, or not malted rye?
It's malted barley.
Okay, that's malted barley, but the rye is unmalted. Okay.
Correct.
Very, very good. So some people have used malted rye before, and the Lot 40 we talked about before is also 100% unmalted rye because it has a whole different enzyme component, which is very, very important. Now, what is the capacity of your distillery at the moment then? MGP is ginormous. What are you?
So we have a 6,000-gallon cooker, and we have 9 6,500-gallon fermenters. So we can make about 15 barrels every 8 hours. So we're not nearly the size of MGP, but we're a good-sized distillery. We have a fair amount of capacity to scale up, and we have 3 aging barns that hold about a total of about 63,000 barrels.
All right. Very, very nice. Okay. So it's about 45. Are you running 3 shifts a day yet, or are you doing 2 still?
We were doing 2, and then with COVID, we scaled back for safety reasons. And we hope to be back to 2 shifts next year sometime.
So you're putting out a good 200 barrels of a whiskey a month then. Not bad.
Oh, yeah.
Easily is what you're trying to say there. Easily. That puts you up in the big boys. I mean, come on, that's not bad. All right.
Well, we got to get this stuff to Germany,
Yeah, exactly.
Beyond, right?
And the Netherlands and Denmark and Switzerland and Italy and Spain and so on. We got a lot of thirsty people over here that just don't know they love rye yet, is what my opinion is.
And we're going to help change that.
All right. I have asked all the questions I wanted to ask. It was a great hour, Brian. Thank you very much for your time. Now, if anyone has any one last questions, ask them now or forever rest your peace. I might have you or someone else back on the show in next year sometimes, but it was great that we could do this so quickly and so without any type of red tape whatsoever. It's great to have you here. I learned personally so much, and I'm really looking forward to actually getting more people actually the liquid to the lips so that we can try this and see how great this stuff is. If you're in Germany, the place to go for this whiskey at the moment, and the only store that actually has it stocked, is Bayo Wine. Please go there and you'll actually be able to buy some of it. Some of it's actually sold out. The next shipment is coming over to Europe next week. And then from there, will be actually then delivered to them. So you can have a Christmas bourbon. I'm sorry, Christmas rye. Ooh, shame on me. Your Christmas rye here. And that might actually be something very, very nice. All right. One last question was here. Any information on the aging prices in Maryland? I'm not sure about the word prices, but processes. Is it very hot? Do you have big temperature differences? He's never been to Baltimore. I remember sweating with 140 degrees at night once. It was August and it was humid and it was terrible. And it snows in the wintertime as well if you get a bad day. So tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, we love the temperatures that we get here in Maryland. We get some really cold winters. We have been, the fall, the average day, will be in the 50s. Like right now we're in the 50s, or 9-10 degrees Celsius. And in the summer we get, oh gosh, what would that be? I can't remember my Celsius anymore. But like you said, we'll get around 100 and look at that. Whiskey Jason.
I know. That's
Oh,
Will
man.
down there in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. I need to meet that guy in person one day. I love the Whiskey Crusaders. And if someone else hasn't watched them.
He knows Texas Timmy, who's a good man.
He does
so that's
know
great.
Texas Timmy.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's great. So we get really hot summers. Like you said, we get 100, 105. We paint our aging barns black. And so the top floor in the summer is around 125 Fahrenheit, 126 Fahrenheit. And then in the winter, they're very, very cold. We don't condition them at all. And we just kind of have louvers on the side so we get nice air ventilation moving through. We probably have a little bit higher evaporation rates because of that, but we like the aging process that we have, and we just do metal-sided rick houses. So we love the big temperature swings. The hotter it goes out into that barrel, the colder it comes back in. Makes great whiskey.
All right. So I couldn't find a picture of your aging houses online, unfortunately. But I'll have to look at it again and try to find one real quick. All right. So because that's unique and that's very special there. All right. Good job. So a lot of people are saying thank you. Tim has been to the house here from Will a few times. We love the Sagamore products. Over here in Germany, we love them as well. Thank you very much for the experience, Sven says here. Many thanks. Marcos mentions that here. Very good. He talked about the processes and not the prices. Yes. All right. And thanks to Brian and Jason. Very, very good. Here, look at all these people are thankful for all we learned here. All right. So I'm going to call it quits today. And so thank you for all the information. Really appreciate it. Good job. Brian,
thank you all.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your passion for this product and also your information about rye whiskey and the history. It was a great pleasure having you on. Whiskey Jason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American over here in Germany. Together today with, the last words are yours, Brian.
Brian Treacy from Sagamore Spirit. Thank you all very much for the opportunity. For a small little brand like us, it means a lot. I appreciate you taking the time to learn a little bit about us today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Be safe.
All the best. Bye-bye.